The unexpected reunion, the fluorescent lights of Boston General's pediatric ward hummed their familiar tune as Natalie Morrison finished her third double shift of the week. Her scrubs were rumpled, her auburn hair escaping its ponytail, and her feet ached in a way that suggested she'd walked approximately 17 miles through hospital corridors. At 32, she'd mastered the art of functioning on 4 hours of sleep, cold coffee, and sheer determination. She was reviewing patient charts at the nurse's station when her colleague, Jennifer, grabbed her arm with unnecessary force. "Nat, you have to see this. The hospital just announced the donor for the new children's wing renovation." Natalie barely looked up. "That's great. We desperately need those updates. It's Dylan Reed." Jennifer's eyes were wide. "The Dylan Reed, from Reed Technologies. He's doing a whole tour tomorrow, meeting staff, the works. Isn't he from Boston originally?" The pen slipped from Natalie's fingers, clattering against the desk. Dylan Reed. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years, though she saw it often enough. In business magazines at the grocery store checkout, in news articles about tech innovation, in the face of her 7-year-old daughter every single morning. "You okay?" Jennifer asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Fine," Natalie managed. "Just tired." "When's this tour happening?" "Tomorrow at 2. All department heads are required to attend, and they're encouraging senior staff to participate too. It's a big deal. He's donating $15 million. Natalie's stomach twisted. Tomorrow at 2, she had promised Emma she'd pick her up early from school for her birthday cupcake party. But more than that, seeing Dylan after 8 years felt impossible. He didn't know about Emma. He'd never known. That night, Natalie sat in the tiny living room of their modest apartment in Dorchester, watching Emma sleep on the couch, her dark curls spread across the cushion. The girl had fallen asleep waiting for bedtime stories, exhausted from playing with the second-hand dollhouse Natalie had spent 3 months saving for. Emma had Dylan's eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold that caught the light. She had his curious mind, always asking questions about how things worked. She even had his laugh, bright and infectious, though she'd never heard his to compare it to. Natalie thought back to their final year at Boston University. She'd been a nursing student on scholarship, working 2 part-time jobs to afford textbooks. Dylan had been a computer science major with big dreams and bigger ideas, staying up until dawn coding in the library while she studied anatomy. They'd collided one October night when she'd spilled coffee all over his laptop, and somehow that disaster had turned into the most intense relationship of her life. He used to trace the freckles on her shoulders like constellations. He'd bring her breakfast when she pulled all-nighters. He'd talked about the future, their future, with such certainty that she'd believed every word, until the night she'd discovered she was pregnant. She'd been terrified but hopeful. Dylan had always talked about family, about building something meaningful. But when she'd tried to tell him, he'd been distracted, stressed about his startup pitch competition. She'd decided to wait until after his presentation. That's when his roommate Trevor had pulled her aside. Trevor, who'd always seemed friendly, who she'd trusted. He'd told her that Dylan had been complaining about feeling trapped, that he'd said a girlfriend was holding him back from his potential. Trevor had shown her text messages, out of context now, she realized, but devastating then, where Dylan discussed needing to cut ties and focus on what matters. Pregnant, broke, and believing Dylan wanted nothing to do with her. Natalie had made the hardest decision of her life. She'd withdrawn from school, moved back to her mother's house in South Boston, and disappeared from Dylan's world entirely. She'd blocked his number, deleted social media, and rebuilt her life from scratch. She'd returned to nursing school part-time after Emma was born, taking 6 years to finish a 4-year degree. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of crushing exhaustion had been worth it for her daughter, but she'd never stopped wondering what if. The next afternoon, Natalie stood in the hospital's main conference room, positioned strategically near the back exit. Hospital administrators flanked the entrance, and local news cameras were set up in the corner. This wasn't just a tour, it was a media event. Then Dylan walked in, and 8 years vanished in an instant. He'd filled out since college, his lean frame now broader, more solid. His dark hair was styled professionally, and he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Success had given him a polish that made him seem almost untouchable, but his eyes were the same, warm and intelligent, crinkling slightly when he smiled at something the hospital director said. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. She needed to leave before he saw her, before everything imploded. She was inching toward the exit when his gaze swept the room and landed directly on her. She watched recognition dawn across his face. Shock, then something that looked painfully like joy. Their eyes locked, and Natalie knew with absolute certainty that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. The hidden truth, Dylan couldn't focus on another word the hospital director said. Natalie Morrison stood 20 feet away, looking exactly like the woman who'd haunted his dreams for 8 years, yet completely different. Gone was the carefree college student in thrift store jeans. This woman wore exhaustion like a second skin, her scrubs hanging on a frame that seemed too thin, dark circles under eyes that used to sparkle with mischief. The moment the formal presentation ended, he excused himself and made his way through the crowd. Natalie was already moving toward the exit. "Natalie, wait!" His voice carried across the room. She froze, her shoulders tensing. When she turned, her expression was carefully neutral. "Dylan, congratulations on your success." "Don't," he said quietly, stopping in front of her. "Don't do the polite stranger thing. Not after everything." "Everything." Her laugh was bitter. "You mean after I disappeared without explanation? I'm sure that worked out fine for you." The words stung. "Worked out fine?" "Natalie, you vanished. I tried calling for months. I went to your mother's house, but she wouldn't tell me anything. I thought—" He stopped, aware of the eyes watching them. "Can we talk privately, please?" She glanced at her watch. I have an appointment." "Tomorrow, then. Dinner. Anywhere you want." "Dylan. 8 years, Nat. I deserve to know why you left." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Pain? "Fine, tomorrow, but somewhere quiet. Not a scene." He pulled out his phone. "Give me your number." When she recited it, his hands shook slightly as he typed. The moment felt surreal, getting her number like they were strangers starting fresh, when once upon a time he'd known every inch of her soul. That evening, Dylan sat in his penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, unable to shake the encounter. His business partner Graham poured scotch and studied him with concern. "You look like you've been hit by a truck. What happened at the hospital?" "I saw Natalie." Graham's eyebrows rose. "The girl from college? The one who disappeared?" "She's a pediatric nurse there." Dylan stared into his glass. "She looked at me like I was a stranger, Graham. Like those 2 years meant nothing. Maybe they didn't, not to her." "That's not true. I know it isn't. Something happened. Something made her run." What Dylan didn't know was that across the city, Natalie was having a very different conversation. "Mama, why are you sad?" Emma asked, her small hand patting Natalie's cheek. They sat on Emma's bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and the drawings that covered every wall. Natalie forced a smile. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just tired." "You're always tired." Emma's dark eyes, Dylan's eyes, studied her seriously. "Is it because of work?" "Partly." Natalie pulled her daughter close. "Emma, what would you say if I told you that your daddy, that he might want to meet you?" Emma's entire body went rigid. "My daddy? But you said he couldn't be with us." Natalie's throat tightened. She'd never lied outright, but she'd crafted careful truths. "He lives far away. He has important work. It's complicated." "I said it was complicated." "And it is, but maybe things could be different now. Does he know about me?" The question pierced straight through her. "No, baby. He doesn't. Why not?" "Because I was young and scared and believed a lie. Because I thought I was protecting both of us. Because I've been a coward. Because I made a mistake," Natalie whispered. "A big one." The next evening, Natalie met Dylan at a quiet restaurant in Cambridge, far from the spotlight. He stood when she arrived, and she noticed he'd chosen a corner booth away from other diners. "You remembered," she said, sliding into the seat, "that I hate being on display." "I remember everything, Nat." His voice was soft. "That's been the problem." They ordered food neither of them would eat. The conversation started carefully. Surface details about careers, the city, anything but the elephant in the room. Finally, Dylan set down his fork. "Why did you leave?" Natalie's hands trembled in her lap. "I thought you didn't want me anymore." Trevor said, "Trevor." Dylan's face darkened. "My roommate Trevor?" He showed me messages. "You talked about cutting ties, focusing on what mattered. I was I was going to tell you something important, but after that I couldn't. What were you going to tell me? This was it. The moment that would change everything. The accidental discovery I was pregnant, Natalie said, the words falling like stones between them. I found out 2 weeks before you graduated. Dylan's face went completely white. You were... Natalie, what are you saying? I'm saying that Trevor convinced me you'd feel trapped, that you'd resent me for derailing your dreams. So I left. Where's the baby? His voice cracked. Did you... No. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, showing him her lock screen. A little girl with dark curls and golden brown eyes grinned at the camera, gap-toothed and beautiful. Her name is Emma. She just turned 7. Dylan stared at the photo like it held the secrets of the universe. 7 years, he breathed. I have a daughter. I have a 7-year-old daughter. Dylan, I'm sorry. You thought I wouldn't want my own child? Anger flashed in his eyes. You thought so little of me that you disappeared. That you kept her from me? I was 23 and terrified. Trevor showed me those messages. Trevor was sabotaging me because he was jealous. Dylan's voice rose, drawing glances. He lowered it, but fury vibrated through every word. He stole my code 6 months after graduation and tried to start his own company. I had to sue him. And you're telling me you based the most important decision of our lives on something that bastard said? Natalie's eyes filled with tears. I know. I realized later, but by then I couldn't just show up and, yes, you could have. Any time in the last 7 years, you could have found me. My company isn't exactly secret. He stood abruptly. I need air. Dylan, please. But he was already walking out. 3 days passed in agonizing silence. Natalie threw herself into work, while Emma asked repeatedly about the daddy who might want to meet her. Dylan's donation to the hospital was finalized through lawyers. No personal contact required. Then, on Saturday afternoon, Natalie's doorbell rang. She opened the door to find Dylan standing there looking like he hadn't slept in days. I want to meet her, he said without preamble. Emma, I want to meet my daughter. Dylan, maybe we should wait, plan this properly. I've already waited 7 years, Natalie. I'm not waiting another day. Before she could respond, Emma appeared behind her, drawn by the unfamiliar voice. She peered around Natalie's leg at the tall stranger, and Natalie watched Dylan's breath catch. The resemblance was undeniable. Emma had his eyes, his nose, even the way his hair curled at the temples. It was like looking at a picture of Dylan as a child, feminized and perfect. Emma, Natalie said softly. This is Dylan. He's your father. Emma's eyes went huge. She looked at Dylan, then at Natalie, then back again. Really? You're really my daddy? Dylan dropped to his knees, bringing himself to her eye level. His voice was hoarse with emotion. Really? And I'm so sorry I haven't been here. But I'm here now if you'll let me be. Emma studied him seriously, then stepped forward and touched the tears on his face. Why are you crying? Because I just met the most beautiful girl in the world and it turns out she's mine. Something in Emma's careful reserve cracked. She threw her arms around Dylan's neck and he clutched her like she might disappear if he let go. Watching them, Natalie felt her own tears fall. She'd robbed them both of so much time. But maybe, just maybe, they could build something from what remained. The bridge between past and present. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of boundaries and discoveries. Dylan came by every evening after work, reading Emma bedtime stories and listening to her endless chatter about school, friends, and her favorite cartoon characters. He bought her books, art supplies, and a telescope when she mentioned liking stars. Natalie watched from the sidelines, heart aching at everything they'd missed. Emma's first steps, her first words, 7 birthdays. Dylan would never get those moments back, and the guilt consumed her. One evening after Emma fell asleep, Dylan lingered in the doorway. We need to talk about logistics, he said. I want to add Emma to my health insurance, set up a college fund. I want to make this legal, put my name on her birth certificate, establish custody arrangements. Of course. Natalie wrapped her arms around herself. Whatever Emma needs. And what do you need, Nat? The question surprised her. I'm fine. You're working yourself to death. Double shifts, this tiny apartment. Let me help. I don't want your money, Dylan. It's not about money. His frustration bubbled over. Do you know what it's like seeing the woman I loved? He stopped abruptly. The past tense hung between them. Loved, not love. I should go, he said quietly. But he kept coming back. And slowly, beneath the careful co-parenting, something else began to grow. The way Dylan's hand would brush hers when passing Emma's drawings. How Natalie caught herself watching him play with their daughter, remembering why she'd fallen for him in the first place. The late-night conversations that stretched past Emma's bedtime, talking about everything except the feelings simmering between them. 2 months in, Dylan invited them to his penthouse for dinner. Emma was awestruck by the floor-to-ceiling windows and city views, but Natalie felt the distance between her world and his more sharply than ever. "You've built an incredible life," she said as Emma explored the terrace. "An empty one," Dylan replied. "I filled it with success because I couldn't have what I really wanted." "Dylan, I never stopped loving you, Nat. Even when I was furious, even when I thought you'd just abandoned me. Finding out about Emma, understanding why you left, it's complicated, but it doesn't change how I feel." Natalie's heart raced. "We can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened, I know. But maybe we can build something new, something honest this time." He stepped closer and Natalie didn't pull away. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and leaping off a cliff simultaneously. Terrifying and exactly right. The choice that defines them 3 months into their careful rebuilding. Graham cornered Dylan at the office with a proposal that made his blood run cold. "The board loves your family story," Graham said. "Tech billionaire discovers secret daughter. It's perfect PR. We could announce it at the product launch next month. Get ahead of any media discovery." "Absolutely not. Emma isn't a publicity tool. Dylan, be reasonable. This humanizes you. And with the IPO coming, we need—" I said no. But Graham had already planted the seed with the board, and within days, Dylan faced an ultimatum. Use the story to boost the company's image before going public, or watch his controlling shares get diluted by investors who thought he was making emotional decisions over business ones. He showed up at Natalie's apartment late that night, and she knew immediately something was wrong. "They want to use Emma for publicity," he said, pacing her tiny living room. "The board, the investors. They think our story will play well in the media." Natalie's protective instincts flared. "No, absolutely not. Emma isn't part of this, I know. I told them that. But they're threatening to force me out if I don't cooperate. The company I built, Nat, everything I worked for. Then let it go." Dylan stopped pacing. "What?" Natalie moved closer, taking his hands. "You told me you filled your life with success because you couldn't have what you wanted. Well, here's what you wanted, me and Emma. A chance at the family we should have had. If your company requires sacrificing our daughter's privacy, then it's not worth it. Natalie, you don't understand. Reed Technologies isn't just money. It's my legacy, my impact, and Emma is your daughter, your actual legacy. The choice seems pretty clear to me." Dylan stared at her and she watched him process what she was really saying. That she believed in him enough to choose family over empire. That she trusted him to do the right thing. The next morning, Dylan called an emergency board meeting. "I'm withdrawing from the IPO," he announced. "I'm restructuring the company as a private entity with limited partners I trust. Anyone who has a problem with that can sell their shares back to me at market value." The board erupted. Graham called him insane. Investors threatened lawsuits. Dylan didn't care. He walked out of that meeting having sacrificed billions in potential wealth. But when he showed up at Emma's school play that afternoon, something he'd almost missed for a conference call, and saw his daughter's face light up when she spotted him in the audience, he knew he'd made the right choice. After the play, with Emma between them holding both their hands, Natalie leaned over and whispered, "I'm proud of you." "I should have done it years ago," Dylan replied. "Figured out what actually matters. Better late than never." That weekend, Dylan officially moved into their world, not by bringing them into his penthouse, but by getting an apartment in their neighborhood, learning the names of Emma's teachers, coaching her soccer team. He stayed private, protective, present. 6 months later, over morning pancakes in Natalie's kitchen with Emma chattering about her latest art project, Dylan reached across the table and took Natalie's hand. "I know we're taking things slow," he said, "and I know we have years of rebuilding to do. But Nat, I need you to know something. Losing the IPO, restructuring the company, walking away from all that potential wealth, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because this right here is everything." Natalie squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. We wasted so much time. Then let's not waste any more. Emma looked between them, syrup on her chin, and grinned. Does this mean Dylan's staying forever? Dylan lifted their joined hands and kissed Natalie's knuckles. If your mother will have me, absolutely. About to.